Well, 2026 is going to be one of those years that goes down in the history books. And to kick off our first eclipse of the year, this one is a banger. So, there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to break down. And as you know, I like to break down the bigger picture of the full sky and not just talk about one or two planets. So, we're going to look at the overall energy here about what's going on, talk about how you can use this energy more constructively in your own life, and also point out some pitfalls of where things can go wrong. Hi, I'm Nikki from Illuminated Movement Astrology, and I'm back again. 2025 is one of those weird years. What can I say? But 2026 energies are moving much better, much faster. So hopefully I can do this on a more regular basis. Either way, let's pull up the chart, dive in, and talk about what the heck is going on in the sky because it is a lot. So here we have it. All right, all right. So this eclipse is a new moon eclipse. So that means it's a solar eclipse where the sun and the moon are next to each other in the sky like peanut butter and jelly. This one's not a full one. If it was a full one, the nodes would be in the same sign, but they haven't moved over yet. So this eclipse is happening at 28 degrees of Aquarius. So that's almost at the end of Aquarius. So that's also going to give this new moon a little bit of a different flavor, which we'll talk about in a couple of moments here. But the nodes themselves are still in Pisces. So we have some of this blending of energy left over from Pisces and right before the nodes, because they travel backwards to the zodiac, are going to shift over into Aquarius in just a little bit. So, this ring of fire, who can see it? Well, Antarctica is going to get a nice view of this one. Or if you happen to live at the very tip of Africa or South America, it's possible for you to see this one, but for the rest of us, can't see it. So it's happening on February the 17th at 4:01 a.m. if you happen to live in the Pacific time zone. If not, it will have been happening earlier for you or possibly even on late February 16th. So let's talk about some of this. We've got 28 degrees over here, as I mentioned. So I'm going to go to the bottom left of this chart here. The moon and the sun together. Okay. 28 degrees of Aquarius. Now, we also have Pluto still in Aquarius here. And as I mentioned, pretty soon this north node is going to shift over into Aquarius. So we've got a lot of Aquarian energy. Of course, we also have Mars there as well. And I don't know if we'll get to Mars. That might be too many planets today. But I do want to mention that Pluto being in the same sign, not conjunct, it's not next to it. So it's not hugely influencing it, but it is still in the general area, is kind of bumping this energy up a little bit more in the Aquarian sector of your personal chart or collectively for us all as well. So when new moons, okay, especially eclipses, happen in the late degrees, this is not just like a casual, oh, we're doing a fresh start and it's a new beginning and let's plant seeds, because we have a late energy and a new energy at the same time, kind of crossing over, right? So this is more about the type of energy that has reached in some way the end of the line and a new beginning needs to take over and happen. So it could be more like a pivot point, if you want to think about it that way, that signals us something is reached culmination and we need to shift gears, right? Something's finished its usefulness. And this could be at the level of our identity, our orientation with the world around us, our orientation with ourselves, or our allegiances. And I want to break down that word allegiance for a moment because I think it's a really good one for this Aquarian energy at this point. So Aquarius is a fixed air sign. It gets talked about a lot as, the most progressive sign. It's humanitarian, it's radical, it's kind of the different one, the weird one. And all that's true. But Aquarius is also very traditional. Okay, it can be quite rigid in some ways. Remember, the original ruling planet, the planet that's in charge of Aquarius, is Saturn. Now, it's Saturn in its more maverick expression, its yang outward expression. And then our modern ruler is Uranus. I think it's a mistake to look at just one ruler without looking at the other. So I want to talk a little bit about both of those. But when we're talking about allegiances, we're talking about making an oath or a bond, right? It's a conscious action that is binding us to something or someone. Okay, and Aquarius probably has to do with things that we think about, right? Our mental visions of the future, our identity within groups and social organizations. It has to do also with humanitarian projects, which, if you're, unless you're living under a rock, right, you're going to have noticed that there's a tremendous amount of fraud and deception, corruption, treachery going on. This is Pluto digging this stuff up in things that maybe were at one time seemed like progressive movements or social justice types of things, that it's actually not necessarily helping people in the way that it was advertised. And that's partly because we're at this really huge, I guess I call it the inversion point. It's like, for me, it's like the upside down, like everything's turned over and has been for decades, maybe centuries. I don't know. I've only been alive for decades, so I can't speak beyond that. But when we look at things, it's like everything's upside down. Things that are supposed to be helping, they're not. They're actually hurting. Things that are supposed to be for our quote unquote well being, well, they're not. They're actually undermining us. Having to be part of a group has meant erosion of our self sovereignty and self authority, particularly since 2020, right? In many cases. Now, not for everybody, but there has been, I'm talking about in a collective sense, this type of energy going on. And so part of what's happening is the breaking down of these systems that don't work anymore, and how we may have felt, whether it was something that was just inborn to the culture we're in, to the country that we're in, to the state or province or town, family, religious sects, whatever it happens to be, there's something, or maybe it's many things that have reached kind of the end of the line, where maybe we haven't even questioned completely what's going on, or maybe we have been questioning for the last however many years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, however long it's been for you, what's going on. And there's a fragmentation that's happening right now on an individual level, and of course also on a collective level. And so we're going to see these big changes around our social structures and our social bonds, because remember, all of the air signs have to do with our relationships in some kind of way. Gemini tends to deal with kind of our brother and sister types of friendships, or our early schoolmates experiences, that kind of thing, or very tight local communities. Then we go into Libra, which is more one-on-one partnerships, whether that's romantic or not. It's these one-on-one, hopefully equal types of relationships. And then by the time we get to Aquarius, we're talking about the big ones, the teams, the clubs, the organizations, the social movements, those kinds of things that are more on that kind of cultural level. And so there may be something in a way where we have been either consciously or unconsciously bound up to something, right? We have an allegiance to a particular way of being, or an idea, or an affiliation that's coming to an end. So some of the other words I think about with allegiance is like loyalty, right? Devotion, like where have we been? Where have we been constant? Where have we been showing up? Where have we been committed? Right? So that's what makes it hard with, when we talk about, I'm going to talk about Uranus in a second, but one of the things that's really difficult about this eclipse is some of those things are, in a sense, irrevocably breaking apart. Eclipses are one of those moments where, we can't see the light of the sun in this case, or the moon. And so there is an eclipsing, a shutting off of something, a cutting off. So in this case, we're talking about severing potentially from our collective identities, right? We're talking about moving away from things that no longer reflect either reality itself or where we are, where we have grown to, right? So part of that is just a natural occurrence, and some of it's going to be a little bit more, especially if you have spent the last however many years it is waking up, being awakened, not woke, but awakened, right? There's a whole different thing that's going on, and you cannot look at the world in the same way. I know I can't. It is so hard. Um, for me to enjoy some things that I used to just enjoy because I see them in such a different light. But it's shifted. Now I have other things that I enjoy. So again, part of this is growth and part of this is, a collective shock to the system because we all need, there's a great mass awakening that's been happening for years now. So part of this other piece could be disillusion, right? This kind of looking at things and going, man, it's just not it anymore. This community I've been a part of, this social contract I've had, it's just not working anymore. Okay. It could also be, again, waking up to the realization that your autonomy has been eroded, right? There is something interesting about belonging in groups, particularly large groups. And this is just the nature of things, right? I've taught most of my life. And if I'm teaching one-on-one, well, that one person gets all my attention, right? If I teach three, well, now I'm just dividing my attention amongst three. But if it goes out to 50, 100, 200, like it's just, I can't possibly have a one-on-one connection, let's say in a 1 hour class or something like that. It's just not going to work, right? The pieces get divvied up more and more and more. And for something really large scale to happen, there does have to be some kind of agreement, right? We may feel like we can't speak up in some way or we'll be ejected from the group, right? That's a big Aquarius thing as well, is kind of this sense of like, do I go along to get along, to be included, or am I in a space where I don't even have to really make that decision and I can mostly just be myself, right? And I'm not talking completely freely, like there's no consequences for any of your actions. Of course not. That's absurd. But this has been a big question about belonging, right? So that's going to be coming up as well. And there is this payoff, there's kind of this sense of like, well, there's safety in numbers. Sometimes you do need to hide out in the group. Like sometimes that is the best choice, right? From an evolutionary perspective, that's not necessarily the wrong thing. We do need social cohesion. We do need high trust societies back. We do need to be able to relax and know that the people around us are helpful to us and not going to harm us, and vice versa. Those people are trusting us as individuals as well. And so a lot of that has been coming under fire, right? So this could be a big theme for you coming up on this particular eclipse. And again, because the new moon, it's kind of in a sense happening in the dark. And in this way, I would say, even though we have some of that illumination of the ring of fire, it's really happening internally, right? That ring of fire inside of ourselves, right? Where it's like, I'm making a shift. And again, this could have been a gradual long-term shift. It could be something that just kind of like, boom, catches your attention and it happens on a dime. You're like, wow, I'm no longer look at the world the same way. And so there's going to be, in whatever way this happens, a reorientation. Most likely something's been happening internally and then something externally shows up, right? A relationship changes or a job ends, or you find out new information that shatters the way that you held in esteem something you had an allegiance to, right? So it'll depend, of course, on your personal chart, how that happens, but it's going to happen in some kind of way. So from here, what I want to talk about is Uranus, because all of this energy, eclipses already kind of have a little bit of an unpredictable quality about them. But then this one in particular is square to Uranus in Taurus, 27 Taurus. So for those of you who are still learning astrology, squares are not always bad, okay? They can be really great energies. It kind of depends on the planets involved, and it really depends on how you deal with the planets, right? So, Uranus is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the planets in charge of Aquarius. So, that makes this planetary combination here even more potent and powerful because they have things in common. So, Uranus at the end of Taurus, it's also conjunct Algol, but I think that's probably a little bit too much for me to talk about today. I'll just say briefly Algol is a very potent energy as well. It's one of the fixed stars, and it's a binary star. So that means there's one star that's a little bit darker and another star that's brighter. And as they're rotating around one another, we can either see the dark side of Medusa or we can see the not dark side of the Medusa star, the Algol star. So she can kind of go either way as well. Algol is also, if you're into things like astrological magic, Algol is not necessarily always a bad omen energy. It's used for protection. So I just wanted to pop that in there because Algol has been coming up a lot. People have been talking about it a lot. Again, it's kind of this two-sided energy. So it could be some energy that comes up that's quite negative. It could be also that, you get great protection on this eclipse as well from something that could have been much more negative impacting you. So Algol, again, not always bad. I always like to tap into her protective forces because I think that's the better way to go, respectfully using that energy for good rather than for nefarious means. So, with this square here, we have energy that's pushing up against one another, right? So, Taurus is fixed earth. We talked about Aquarius being fixed air. It's this fixity having to push up against each other. And if you have a lot of fixed energy in your chart, or people that do, that doesn't like to bend, right? Fixity is meant to hold its position, to be the height of a season, to be the apex, right? To sustain over time. But that's not going to happen on this eclipse, right? There's things that are going to be busting apart and breaking apart, and we'll see how that plays out throughout 2026 and going forward. Now, we've had Uranus and Taurus for many years now. It's been there since about 2018. And it's getting ready to move into Gemini, where it'll stay and won't come back around to Taurus for another 84-ish years. But at the end of Taurus as well, what have we been doing for this last 7.5, 8-ish years? Well, we've been talking about things like how do we change? How do we deal with Taurian themes? So financial systems has been a big one, right? And material systems, because Earth has to do with things that are tangible, right? I've been talking about the food systems. Land has been a big one, and property, natural resources. We've had all kinds of conversations about changes that are going there, experiments that are being run, poisons that are happening, moving towards organic things, overhauling, right? Uranus wants to change, wants to overhaul, wants to make better and improve, whether that's moving forward or returning to something more traditional, like traditional farming has been coming back up, things of that nature. We've also had a lot of issues around body autonomy. That's been huge, right? And experiments that have gone wrong. And I'll just leave it at that. If you know, you know. There's been issues of survival. That's been a big one. Feeling like safety and security have been very rocky, right? It just feels like the ground beneath us is shaking, because that's kind of what Uranus does, is it rocks the boat, it shakes things up. What Uranus is really trying to do is Uranus is trying to wake us up and move us out of patterns that are no longer sustainable or in some way keeping us stuck. Okay. But it's not necessarily a pleasant experience. None of the outer planets can be particularly warm and fuzzy. They're really far away from Earth, right? They're kind of just these things that feel like they come from the outside out at us, especially if you don't have the outer planets in contact with your personal planets in your chart. If you happen to be an outer planetary person, then this energy feels much more personalized to you. But for a lot of people, it just feels like things are coming from the outside that you have no real control over. And that can be really, really difficult. And it's been quite uncomfortable to have Uranus and Taurus. Taurus wants to be comfortable, wants to be left alone, wants to have their things, where they have them. They want to take care of their people. They don't want stuff moving around. They don't like it, right? Taurus is the most stable of all the zodiac signs. So it's been even more uncomfortable to have the planet of shocks and changes and anything goes to be going through the sign that doesn't like those things. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at, with this eclipse, potentially some, I don't know if you can handle it, even more shocking information or events that in a sense, force is a strong word, but I'm going to use it, force ideological re-evaluation. Okay. Like the things coming out with the certain naughty lists and the certain files that everyone's been talking about for years. Now, a lot of us that back in the day read WikiLeaks, you know, this is more of the same. It's sickening. It's disgusting. It needs to come out. People need to see how rotten the puppeteers in the background really are, because we need to do something about it. Right. So we can't go forward with this kind of thing. Now, what can be overwhelming is, again, getting just bombarded with too much shocking information for some people to handle, right? So that's something to watch out for. Another thing that we're looking at is we're looking at potentially financial or potentially bodily events that kind of like break us out of the spells that we can all be under. And that could be a literal thing, or, a metaphor, if you will. But when we're talking about Aquarius, we're talking about things that are removed, right? It's distant. It's outer space, right? And Leo is more like the sun in the center of our solar system. So Aquarius energy can be quite abstract. One of my Aquarius friends, hates anything that's like overly romantic. Like it just drives her crazy. Because there is this kind of like, doesn't need to go there. It's more of like a friendly type of energy. We don't need to get overly inundated with feelings, right? That's not really an Aquarian thing. Not that they don't have feelings, because they do 100%, but there's something a little bit more objective about the way they feel through their lens gets moved through most of the time, not all of the time. So there's a possibility here that we're also talking about confrontations, right, between what we think or what we've been idealizing, what we've been visioning as the way forward, and then what actually sustains us or what's actually viable moving forward. So there may be some kind of, with that squared energy, pushback or some kind of wall or some kind of thing we run into that in a sense forces us to reevaluate. So this is a really, really powerful and very visceral. It's not just happening on the mental plane. It's going to be happening on the material plane, the felt plane as well, because Taurus is involved. So it's really kind of this mind body running into one another moment. This is a very big combination of energy. Now, positively, it's breakthrough energy. And it really can be an aha moment, because Uranus really can bring in these moments of like, oh, I know now, I know what to do. I don't even know how I know this, but I know. And that's a great feeling, right? It can break you out of places that you felt really stuck. Awesome. Negatively, it's really destabilizing, right? It can really do a number on people's nervous systems, their mental states, which of course affects the bodily state, and vice versa. So be careful, right? Take good care of yourself this entire year. I mean, do it all the time, but have a little bit of extra, whatever you do for yourself, care over these next couple of weeks, because this is major, major energy here. So where it's going to be harder hitting is if you cling with this fixed energy. Fixed energy likes to cling on to things till the last second sometimes. Whatever you're clinging to that's outdated, that's going to make this more painful. Or if you can kind of just go with the flow a little bit more and roll with the punches, it's going to be a better time. Now, just quickly, I want to talk a little bit about this north node here. So we got the north node next to Venus. So Venus and Pisces, north node in Pisces, they're almost exact. They're only a couple of minutes off of one another, so they might as well be on top of each other. And Venus loves being in Pisces, so this is a great position for Venus to be. With this north node, we're kind of, again, it's another one of these pieces that pushes us to reevaluate things, right? Taurus, we've been looking at what do we value? What's worth it? It's a great Taurus question. Is this worth my blood, sweat, and tears? Right? Is this worth what I'm doing for it? And it might be a hell yes, it might be a hell no. Okay. Or anything in between. So with Pisces here, what do you cherish now? I mean, the world has changed so much in the last 5-6 years, and it's going to change even more. We're on the precipice of changes that we can't even fathom right now, but I'll get to that. Where are you now? What have you outgrown? What does your heart really desire now? Where do you need a little bit more compassion potentially with yourself? Even though I know compassion has been such an overused word, it's just like saturated. But this moment of like, you need a little bit of maybe gentleness with yourself or someone else or a situation instead of just attacking it. Okay, like where is that balance? So part of what needs examination, right, especially after we've had Neptune and Pisces for so long, is also looking at how we may be glamorizing suffering or idealizing or romanticizing, like victimizations and oppression and savior complexes and moral high grounds or even things around, spiritual gurus getting knocked off their pedestals. That's going to keep happening, right? These kind of fantasies maybe that have been built up around anything in your life that's kind of kept you a little bit disconnected from earth. Okay, you need to get in line your spiritual well-being. When I'm talking about spiritual well-being, I'm talking about your inner well-being, right? Your spirit that inhabits your physical body, your ensouled rightness. And that comes out for different people in different ways, but really getting those things that get the values set for yourself so that as we go forward, we have this center to work from. So when life keeps pulling us side to side, we can roll with it, right? Because we always have center. It's actually the key to balance is being able to negotiate whichever way you get pulled. You always know where your true home is. So I think that's kind of a beautiful piece here on this eclipse is looking at that. Again, avoiding those traps of glamorizing any kind of suffering or savior mentality stuff. That's not going to work. That needs to go. So the last thing I want to talk about here brings me to our friend Neptune and Saturn. So Saturn is the other planet that is in charge of Aquarius. So Saturn here also important on this eclipse. Now it's not making, I mean, it's not making too many big, I think it's kind of like a semi square, but anyway, I don't want to get too far into this, but Saturn here moving 0 degrees next to Neptune. I will do a separate video on that because it's way too big of a topic. But this right here at Aries, 0 degrees, moving together, they will be exact. As you can see, Neptune is the one that's ahead, right? It's 0 degrees, 38 minutes. Saturn is catching up. It's the faster moving planet. It's at 23 minutes right now. So on February the 20th, those will be exactamundo on the nose, not even just in one plane. They're like way in alignment here. It's pretty extraordinary. And they're at the beginning of the zodiac and they're at 0 degrees. This is unbelievably rare energy. Now, Saturn and Neptune coming together, that happens about every 36-ish years. So that's not as rare in and of itself. But the fact that they are at Aries 0 degree point It hasn't happened in recorded history. I've said this in many other videos. I've been looking at ephemerises. I just got another one. I haven't finished looking through it that goes back further, but it hasn't happened in at least 5,000 years. Now, I know there's some astrologers out there that are throwing out exact dates. I'm not going to do that because I can't confirm it. And yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. But it hasn't happened in at least 5,000 years. So if we're looking at, this is 3 days out from an eclipse. So this is huge energy happening. And again, Saturn being one of the ruling planets here, we can't ignore this energy. I mean, we couldn't anyway, but it also impacts this major shift. It turns the volume up even higher on this eclipse because of Saturn being one of the ruling planets. Now, one of the nice things here is what's in charge of Aries? Well, it's Mars, and Mars and Saturn being in each other's houses, in each other, or excuse me, in each other's signs. It's called a mutual reception, and so they actually can kind of help each other out. Usually, we think of Mars and Saturn as maybe not everybody's favorite planets, but here it's like they can help us like take better action, better measured movement. Things with integrity can be done a little bit easier here. So I actually really like this alignment a lot. Now, with Saturn and Neptune here being at zero, Saturn, well, actually, let's start with Neptune. Neptune is like spirit, right? It's how we transcend and connect to creator, source, God, the divine, whatever it is that you ascribe to. And Saturn is the material plane. It brings things into existence. So we have, it's also about time and karma, right? There's a lot going on here. But if we just look at it kind of in a more stripped down way, this is spirit and matter coming together at the beginning of the zodiac, at the beginning degree. It's like we are alive at the breath of creation point itself. We are, it's incredible. I mean, I try to wrap my head around this. It's incredible that we are alive at a time where we get to help plant the next level of human consciousness on this planet. And that is amazing. Now that's coming with a lot of responsibility, right? That's a Saturn word, a favorite Saturn word, right? And that's part of why we need all this integrity, right? This heart center with this Venus, North Node Pisces, right? And we need to shed, pardon my language, we need to shed the shit, right? It's got to go. These old systems, these old ways of looking at, oh, we are the world, Live Aid, Band Aid, Fire Aid, USAID, all this crap has got to go. It's all lies. And it's really, really hard for a lot of people to deal with that. Even when you do get that information, it's like, what do I do with this now? Right. And so a lot of us are in the space of like, I don't know what to do with this now. And I have to tell you, with this 0 degree moment over here, no one really knows what's coming up because we haven't written it yet. Any astrologer that tells you they know exactly what's coming up, they're full of it. Right? We don't know. We can hope and we can vision, and that's why we need to have integrity of ourselves, our incarnated in souls, our spirit, our words, our actions, our deeds. All of these things are ideas. What we're going to bring forward really, really needs to have this high integrity level. And that's not easy. And not everybody's going to do it, right? Not everybody's going to do it. And that's just the way it is. So for those of us who are walking the path, right, the spiritual path, the evolutionary path to be our best selves, to plant the trees that we will never sit in the shade of, this is a huge moment. This is something that won't just happen on one day, but it's really this call. So if you're feeling the call, right, this is the time to start moving things forward. And as we move, I did a whole video on this as well, as we move out of the outer planets being inundated in earth and water, it's a very internal, a yin, a feminine, almost like a cocoon type of energy that we've been in. We're moving out of that. And now for the next chunk of time, at least the last 7-8 years, we're going to have fire and air. This is yang, this is masculine, this is extroverted, right? This is action oriented. Everything is going to move. So we need to be deliberate, plan, integrity of mind, body, spirit, word, actions, thoughts, all of the things that we can do because this is such a critical juncture. And the more we do it, the more we set the examples for other people around us to potentially, this has to be of their own free will, right? Wake up. You can't wake up other people. They're going to wake up or they're not, right? And some people are not, and that's going to be painful too, but it is what it is. So I don't mean to sound uncaring, but it just is. Um, as we go forward, this solar eclipse is not just, another eclipse like we would have dealt with maybe 10 years ago or so. We are at these really incredibly critical junctures. 2026, the year of the fire horse as well. That hasn't happened in 60 years. 2026 is a universal 1 year. If you reduce the numbers down, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6 equals 10. You reduce that down, and it's to a 1. So many new beginnings. We're really sitting in this liminal space and in this very important threshold of needing to make a lot of decisions. And the way that things have been going, a lot of it needs to be done and not come with us forward, right? If we were going to go climb a mountain, I'm not going to bring my bathroom sink. It's just, that's silly, right? I need other things now. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to throw out my first aid kit. I'm going to take that with me, right? So these are the things that we're making decisions about right now. What are we taking with us and what are we leaving behind? And that's a lot, and a lot of this, it has to start from within us. It starts individually, it's rippling out, it's already rippling in bigger and bigger and bigger ways. Don't listen to the propaganda on the news. If you still do, stop that. Okay. Um, because this really has to start from sovereignty it's been stripped from us. And that also has to do with the era of the age of Pisces, where we're seeing the inversion right now. We're seeing, I should pull it up one of these days, but there's often in the old depictions of Pisces, the two fish were actually upside down from one another. So one is right side up and one is upside down, belly up, right? Belly down. And that's to me, and then the string is in the middle, like I said, like the upside down. So we're kind of at this end point where we have to see things as they are. We have to see through it, whatever you want to call it, the matrix, the inversion, the Wizard of Oz moment, whatever it is for you. Okay, that's where we are. And so it's going to be a lot of big changes. We're just not the same on a human consciousness level. We need to reclaim our humanity and our divinity, because if we don't, it's going to be stripped away from us. And I know I'm not up for that. So let's quickly recap, shall we? All right. So, two quick recap here. This is not a gentle eclipse. Some eclipses are more potent and powerful than others. And depending on your own personal chart, this may or may not be potent for you. But it's really going to be dismantling leftover illusions, right? And falsity, things that are inauthentic. They gotta go. It's time for them to go. It's going to end allegiances, right? That are either worn out or are not based in mutual well being. Okay, so that's going to go. We're going to continue to let go or be asked to let go of outdated systems. And a lot of them need to go. But remember, we don't want to leave just everything behind. There are some things that we do need to bring with us. And Uranian energy, Aquarian energy isn't always just, I really kind of hate these words now because they're so overused, but radical and revolutionary. It also can be actually quite traditional. We can bring things back that we need, that maybe we've abandoned or need to rediscover, and that helps us move forward as well. So we're looking a lot of ways in this mind-body healing, processing some of the past to move into the future, moving away from things that ask us to give up our self-sovereignty, or we face some kind of being kicked out of the tribe. That's not so great. If that's happening, maybe you need to reevaluate these things. Because it's a new moon at the late degrees, we're talking about that threshold, that little liminal space between the things that are ending and the things that haven't quite come to fruition yet. This is going to happen on an internal level and be also reflected out in the world. Take good care of yourself. This can be a lot of bombarding energy, particularly because we've got that Uranus energy in there as well. So take extra good care of your mental state, your physical state. Go out in nature, play with your kids, right? Dance to some songs, do things that also bring you back to yourself, because it's really that center that we move out from. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments how you're doing and what we're looking at for this eclipse for you, where it's falling in your chart, if you know that, or if there's just something else that feels like it's coming up with this energy. All right, my friends, until the next time, take care.